Hi everyone, and welcome to this video tutorial on getting started with 3D maps in Excel. Now, 3D Maps is a data visualization tool that's available in Excel 2016, 2019 and the latest version of Excel for Office 365. Now, if you are using Excel 2013, you can also use 3D Maps, but it is available as an add-in called Power Maps. So you're going to need to jump into your options, go to add-ins and enable Power Maps if you're using Excel 2013. For everybody else, you should have 3D Maps already installed. So if you click on the Insert ribbon, you'll see you have a group, it's called Tours, and you have an option here for 3D Maps. So if you can see that, then you already have it installed. Now, 3D Maps or three-dimensional maps help you visualize data in different ways and maybe discover insights that you might not be able to see in traditional two-dimensional tables and charts. Now, 3D maps are designed to analyze geographical data. So, for example, if you're trying to analyze and compare the population of countries around the world, or maybe analyze crime statistics for different towns or states, that's the type of data that is suitable for 3D maps. It needs to have a geographical element to it. And with 3D maps, you can plot your geographic data on a globe or a custom map. You can show that data changing over time. You can build engaging cinematic visual tours. And most important, any map you create can be shared with other people. Now, one of the most important things to note here is that 3D Maps does use Bing Maps in order to compile the map. So you need to make sure that when you're creating your 3D map, that you have an active internet connection. So this tutorial video is really just designed to really get you started with 3D maps. You'll see once we get into it, there are so many different options and things that you can do. We're not going to have time to go through all of them in this very short tutorial, but it will at least give you a springboard in which to gain more knowledge. So we're going to create a quick map, and I'm going to use this data that you can see here. Now, this is data that I've downloaded from Microsoft, and it's basically showing me different power stations in different states in the US and the type of energy that they provide, along with some other information in there. But the main point here is that it is geographical information because we have states, we have counties, and they're all within the US. Now, you can also see here that this data is in a table, and I can see that because once I'm clicked in it, I have the table design ribbon at the top. But it is worth noting that you don't necessarily have to put your data in a table in order for 3D maps to work. So let's create our 3D map. Just click anywhere within your data, go to the Insert ribbon, we're going to click 3D Map, and I'm going to say Open 3D Maps. Now you can see here what it's done is launch the 3D Maps dialog box. And it's given me some suggested tours or suggested ways that I could display my data. Now, it's worth noting that these merely act as a template, a starting block. They're simply suggestions by Excel based on the data that I have in my spreadsheet. So kind of look at this. If you're used to using something like pivot tables, there's a recommended pivot tables option where again Excel will suggest to you based on your data which pivot table is most suitable. So this is kind of similar to that. Now I'm going to ignore all of these recommendations and I'm actually going to click the New Tour button to create one from scratch. So what you can see now is I have this globe, and based on my data, Excel has plotted all of the power stations on the map of the US for me. And 3D Maps has basically used Bing to geocode the data based on the geographical information it can find in the data set. Now what you'll see here, again, much like a pivot table, I have this little floating panel. This is my field list. And what you'll see in here are essentially all of the column headings from my original data set. And on the right hand side I have a layer pane, and this is where I can go in and I can add fields to visualize and analyze my data in different ways. Now the first thing that you want to check in this little pane is that you have your fields mapped correctly. So I can see here underneath location it says county and it's mapped it to county. If I click the drop down, it's going to show me some other fields. So if these are mapped incorrectly, you want to make sure you go in and select the correct one. So for example, if where it has state, if this says something other than state, you want to make sure you go in and change that to state province so that it's mapped correctly. Now currently, if I was to do nothing else, this map is showing a blue dot in every location where there is a power station. Now I can refine this by adding fields from the field list just here into these fields down here, height, category and time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the capacity megawatts field down into the height area. So I'm going to drag and I'm going to drop it to add that in. And you can see that my data on my visualization now changes, and it's given me this little legend down here, which is essentially just a text box, because I'm now seeing a height representation of the capacity of each power station. And if you look at this globe, you can see that we now have our data displayed by height. So you kind of get a visual representation of what that's going to look like. Now, for me, this legend area down here isn't really being very helpful. It's not really showing me anything. I don't really need a legend for what I currently have displaying on the globe. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this text box, press the delete key to get rid of that. So now I might want to display my data in a slightly different way. So I'm going to go to my field list, I'm going to grab the state field and I'm going to drag that down and drop it on the categories area. And now you can see I have everything color-coded by state. Now it might be that in this case I do want to have a legend displayed for people who aren't really too familiar with the map of the US and which states are where. So if I want to bring that legend back, all I need to do is jump up to my ribbon, and you can see in the insert group I have a legend option. I can click it and it's going to give me my legend, which I can then move up here. I'm going to resize by dragging these handles in, and I'm just going to drag that down like so. Now also with this legend, you can see that currently the heading of the legend just says layer 1, so it's not particularly meaningful. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to change this heading so that it says states. So I'm going to go over to my layer pane. You can see at the top we have layer 1. I have a little pencil button which is going to allow me to rename this layer, and I'm going to call it state. And there we go, I've now quickly renamed that layer, that legend. Now I could carry on going through, dragging my field list, adding more items into here, and this is very much where you can kind of play around with it and get it to display how you want. There's a lot of trial and error when it comes to these things. If you don't like what you've dragged down here, you can simply drag out to remove that field. Now when it comes to editing, you also have all of these options on this ribbon. So lots of things that you can do in here, and we are going to be jumping into some of these. But you can see I've got 3 highlighted in the view group. So if I want to remove the field list, I can click that to toggle that off or toggle it back on. I can remove my layer pane, or I can toggle that back on. I can also remove the tour editor if I want to get more real estate on the screen. Now one of the things you might want to do here, and for the time being I'm going to turn my field list off, and I'm also going to turn my layer pane off, is I might want to navigate around my 3D map. So one thing I might want to do is maybe zoom in or hone in on a particular power station or a particular area. And you can see here in the map group I have a find location option. I'm going to type in Los Angeles, click on find, and it's going to zoom me into that particular area, and I can see all of the power stations located in the Los Angeles area. So a couple of other things I can do here. I can add some map labels. So at the moment it's quite hard for me to tell where these power stations are located in the Los Angeles area. So if I turn on map labels, that's going to give me all of these labels. So it's a lot easier for me to interpret and see exactly what I'm looking at. I also have navigation buttons in the bottom right corner, so I can tilt it up if I prefer to look at it like that, or tilt it back down again. I can turn it around either way, and I can use the zoom in or the zoom out. Also, if you have a scroll wheel on your mouse, you can use that to zoom in or zoom out again, so you can get an overall view. So you can see here it's a really nice visualization. Now that's all well and good. You can take a look at your data, you can move around, it all looks good. But something else that we can do, which you might find really interesting, particularly if you're giving some kind of presentation and really trying to make the data come alive, is that you can create your own tours. So essentially we are in a new tour. You can see here it says Tour 3. If I want to, I can change the name of this tour just by clicking, and I can say Power Stations. And each tour is made up of different scenes. So at the moment I have one scene just here, and that is exactly what I'm looking at. But if I wanted to make this more engaging and maybe zoom in and zoom out of different areas as I'm speaking, I can add other scenes which will essentially create kind of like a mini video tour. So in this example, I'm going to make this map flat, and I'm actually going to, let's tilt it up this way. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and pull it down like so. So this is going to be my first scene, an overview of all of the power stations across all of the states. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new scene to this tour by clicking on New Scene, making sure I have Scene 2 selected, and this time in this scene I'm going to zoom in on a particular area. So I'm going to zoom in on California. So I'm going to say Find Location, California, and I'm going to zoom this one in just on the state of California, and that's going to be my second scene. I'm going to add another new scene, and this one is going to zoom in on the state of Colorado. And again, let's zoom all the way in there and drag that down, and maybe I want to tilt this a little bit so we get an idea of perspective. I'm going to add another new scene, and for this one I'm going to zoom all the way out so we can see the whole map of the US, and I'm going to tilt that back up like so. Now of course there's lots of different things you can do here, lots of options that you can add. You can do things like add text boxes into your scenes, 2D charts, so on and so forth. But hopefully that gives you an idea. You add scenes to create a tour. Now it's also worth checking, if we click on this first scene, you'll see that we have a Scene Options button on the ribbon. So let's click on Scene Options. You can give each of your scenes a name. So I'm going to say Overview of the US. You can specify how long you want that scene to stay on the screen. So in my case it's 10 seconds. Now I'm going to take that down to 5. You can choose your effect, your transition, so how it moves between the different scenes, and you can apply some different effects if you want to. So I'm just going to apply, let's just do flyover, just so you can see what that looks like. And I'm going to close that down, and I could go through and do the same thing for each of my scenes. So let's just do one more. I'm going to call this one Los Angeles. And let's do a different effect. Let's do Dolly in this case, and click on Close. Now something else you also might want to do is you can change the look and feel of your scenes. So for example in this last one, if I jump up to the ribbon again, I have a themes option which will allow me to change how this particular scene looks. So again, you can go through these and you can choose one that's going to be most appropriate for the data you want to display. So I'm just going to use that one as an example. I'm going to add a quick text box, and the title is going to be All Power Stations in the US, and you have some formatting buttons up there if you wish to change anything. I'm going to click on Create, and I can move that up to the top here. If I wanted to add a background, I could do that as well, just to make it stand out a little bit more. So once you've been through and you've built up all of your scenes and created your tour, you can then play your tour to see what that looks like. And you can see we have a Play Tour button just here. So let's click it and take a look. So this first scene is showing me all of the states, It then zooms in to California. It's then going to zoom across to Colorado, and it's going to go to that more flat layout. It's then going to zoom back out, and it's going to show me all of the power stations in the US. So it's a really nice, smooth, engaging way to visualize and display data. I'm going to press Escape to come out of there. A couple of other things I can do is I can choose to create a video of my tour. So this would be if you wanted to share this with other people, you can package this up into a nice little video, and you can then upload that to cloud storage, send it to other people, and they can then view your tour. Now, as you can probably see, there are loads and loads of different options, different things you can do with this, but hopefully that's given you enough just to get started with 3D maps.